Hey everybody, this is Dr. Flight. I hope you're doing well today, and I'd like to spend a little bit of time today talking about some current trends in marketing. And these trends are trends that have been evolving in the marketing space for, in some cases, 20 or 30 years, but have accelerated perhaps in the very recent past. So, when we think about the role of marketing in the organization, the role of marketing has changed and shifted to one of greater importance and integration across different functions. When we talk about marketing from years ago, we would talk about it as something that was very functional. We produced products, we talked to retailers, we did sales, we did advertising. We promoted the product and got people excited about the product so that we could create sales. Today, the role has shifted quite a bit to include a far more strategic emphasis on defining what the business is, defining the role the business will play in society, its mission, its purpose, identifying sustainable competitive advantages and distinctive capabilities is a big area that we leverage in order to bring value to the customer. So those strategic sort of elements have really evolved quite a bit. So as we move forward, let's talk a little bit about kind of things that have impacted how marketing is done. One very clear element here is a shift of power from away from the marketing organization to the end user and the customer. It's clear that the customer has more access to information, and that has in many cases liberated and elevated their ability to negotiate, and that has played a big part of what we're kind of doing now. As a result, the organization has been forced to be less internally focused and more externally focused. You may have a company that is operations oriented, so they view themselves as somebody who creates an object, or creates a product, is like a production line. Shifting a little bit though, most organizations today view them as not only production line operations, but we're doing it for a purpose, like to satisfy a customer's need. And while we want to be the best we can be executing that operation, at the end of the day, a customer has to buy the product. And so sometimes that shift then manifests itself as a market orientation, where decisions that are made as a result of a market-based perspective. So again, information is one of the key drivers here. The ability for customers to get information, to access information, and to learn about products or competitors very quickly. That has leveled the playing field a little bit, especially when you negotiate. We have something called information asymmetry, when one party has more information than another. And there's less information asymmetry when customers have access to lots of information. So that's just a reality. That's just a reality that we face when we deal with doing business now. And it's ever increasing. Big M, little m. So here's another trend talked about in the introduction, where I'm going to pull up the other part here, little m. Little m is the tactical or functional doing of marketing. So when we execute a plan to price, we execute an advertising plan, we execute a distribution strategy. Those are little m activities where we have frontline employees who are rolling out these the implementation of our plan. And that's in the past, again, 20, 30 years ago, That's what marketing was. It was largely an implementation function where the plan was set and then the execution of the plan happened. Shift that around a little bit where we talk big M, and I know this is kind of a funny way to say this, but big M is strategical marketing. It's much, much more focused on the long-term implications of marketing in the organization, and it deserves upper management attention, and that's where it is. So the parallel to this is 20 or 30, 40 years ago, it would be relatively less often or rarer to see a chief marketing officer, so somebody in the quote-unquote C-suite in the marketing role. But today, everybody has a chief marketing officer. In fact, some organizations have a chief user experience officer. There's lots of officers now that deal with marketing and market-related decisions at the C-suite level. So that, in the past, again, 40 years ago, the CMO position really didn't exist, but obviously today it does, and that's that evolution. That's that shift or trend. And to some degree, companies and brands are viewing themselves more as an image, less operational, less like that, but more of a kind of an image that we have and that value in the marketplace. So, moving forward, other things that we can talk about, the perceptions of value. There's something called commoditization, and basically when a product is launched, it's probably new, and then when over time competitors copy that product, it becomes available more readily in lots of different versions. And eventually the product becomes what we call a commodity. There's nothing really particularly special about the product anymore. It was special when it was first launched, but now it's everywhere and lots of people produce it and customers can get a lot of areas. That obviously happens. It happens more frequently now, or more rapidly. The point of launch to commoditization time frame is shrinking, which creates strategic issues. If you want to protect your cash flow, that's certainly something to think about. So other things, mass customization. Through the use of technology, we are able to create personalized products, something called mass customization, when you can create a customized product using the efficiencies of mass production. So that's an advance in technology, a lot of times in digital technologies that are allowing us to do that. Customers expect or come to expect personalized attention, and yet how can we do that in a mass production way? That's basically the question that gets asked. Shifting dynamics of not only work, but also living at home, the home dynamic, as opposed to being out in public as much, I guess. Maybe after effects of COVID, but certainly this is a trend where work-life situations are more of a discussion as opposed to simply work. So where people consume and how they consume is being shifted more towards the home at a very rapid rate, great rate. Certainly sociocultural shifts, and these things really warrant a lot of discussion. We're not going to talk about them a lot today, but they warrant huge discussions. The increasing lack of interpersonal communication. So just as I'm delivering this lecture in a video today, we may be never in a class personally face-to-face, and that's going to impact how we perceive each other, how we perceive work, how we think about products, all of those types of things. But how we do sales, how we do negotiations, being multimodal in terms of communication as opposed to simply speaking to somebody face to face is going to be positive and going to be negative, just kind of depending on the application. Tribalism, increased polarity, whether it's social polarity or political polarity, that's an increasing concern, that people in general find less and less middle ground. And so when people don't find middle ground, we have to find ways to work together. And sometimes we do that through business, but that's it. Perceived or fantasized reality. So augmented reality, the metaverse concept where we can trade, do business, work, live, at least in some capacity exist in a fictitious or fake environment. That's going to be on the future here. That's something that in the future, as we move forward, defining what reality is will be a greater challenge. Then also things like time compression, the simple thing that it used to be you woke up and you went to work from 8 to 5 or something like that. And then when you were done work, you didn't work again for a whole 12 plus hours, 12, 18 hours. Nowadays, there's really not, there's less and less on time and off time. It's all on time. It's all because we're connected digitally. Customers contacting us 24/7. There's no off time. There's no time you're not on business. And that's, compressing our time and our ability to do work, and define what those times are. Those are big, big issues. The final thing we'll leave you with on this particular page, which is a big shift in trend, deals with an idea that companies are expected to play greater social roles today than they ever were in the past. It used to be in the past a company would provide an economic value and satisfy some unmet need or want that was fairly stated, fairly straightforward in terms of being satisfied by a specific product, functional in a lot of ways. Today, the social aspect of a brand or a product that fulfills personal psychological needs is far, far greater. We even expect today that the companies and brands that we engage with satisfy political positions and social positions that align with our personal, beliefs and thoughts. And this is a far, far different perspective on offering and providing value than we used to think in the past. So this expectation of organizations as social like contributors is something that's vastly, vastly new. Okay, let's run through some other items here. Omnichannel distribution technology. These are just other trends that are happening. So we'll walk through these fairly quickly that you should know about. It's an expectation that we reach customers lots of different ways. So whether we reach them through traditional advertising or we reach them through sale to sales like personal sales or through our retail outlet, or also through digital technologies, through our app, through social media, through our website, and doing all of those simultaneously, having an omni-channel presence, whether those are individual points of contact or whether they're true distribution channels. What's expected more and more is that we reach customers in many diverse ways as opposed to just a few. So the idea of omni-channel or every channel distribution technologies is something that we're doing. Shifting demand patterns certainly through how people get information. So customers are going to, again, this is an omni-channel issue perhaps as well, but how we consume information is not only how, but where those sources come from is ever increasing. It's something that we're seeing all the time. So again, kind of what the customer expects from us and our ability to deliver on omni-channel is, of course, growing at a very, very rapid rate. Changes in product selection, customers' expectations to get the product delivered to them. That's kind of an interesting thing. The shifting from analog to digital is always there. So replacing books with e-readers, things like that. Replacing traditional face-to-face classroom education with online learning, another example of that. Being able to purchase and share, like money technologies have changed quite a bit. PayPal, Venmo, those types of being able to pay using those parties as opposed to a bank. It's kind of a big deal. All of these kind of shifts and changes have changed how we provide value and products to the customer. The final thing, or two things, I guess, we'll talk about maybe some shifting ethics, but media fragmentation. We used to have 3 broadcast networks, and then Fox came along to make it 4. And then cables came along in 81 and 82 primarily for the public. Since then, there have been, of course, live streaming and these on-demand streaming services over the last 15 years as Netflix and others have emerged from their technologies into production companies. The fragmentation then and ways we can advertising reach customers is a big deal. So when we talk about fragmentation, we talk about kind of like all these different ways customers get information. But what's important to us is it allows us to reach fragmented audiences. So if I have a very special product with a very special, unique footprint, maybe an audience or geography and such, I can reach them and not overpay by reaching other people who are not in my specifically defined market segment. While there's a lot of fragmentation, the effect is it helps me. I have to be very careful. I mean, it adds the complexity of my media buys, but it allows me to reach people in a very, very specific and unique way that in the past I would have had to spend money on one of the big 3 networks and wasted a lot of my advertising buy. Now I can be much more efficient with that advertising buy. Still, we have TV and radio making up 41% of viewership of media, in terms of where money and advertising spent. But look at how much is being spent now in digital and in the digital space. Declining buys are obviously in magazines and in newspapers, so those are shrinking. But lots of people are spending their ad buys in media. And that just, again, explains or describes how we can fragment our markets and do specific media buys, therefore making more use of our media budget when we're going out and trying to reach our customers. Okay, last item here is just simply privacy security. And kind of how we're gathering data. Every opportunity that we have to interact with the customer today, nearly everyone has a digital footprint or has some capacity to be recorded. And so the question is, how are we recording that? How are we sharing that? How are we using that information? And it unleashes a whole new spectrum of ethical issues that we should and are concerned about. So as we move forward, we want to think about how those decisions we're making on the data that we're using to drive our decisions will be shared and used. Again, we have unparalleled access to data. We have more data than we've ever had and will ever, and we have more data than we need, in fact. And there's value in that data. So if there's value in that data, the reaction is, well, why don't we sell it? Why don't we use that as something that we can leverage into a cash flow? And the question is, should we, and how are we going to do it ethically? Okay, so this was a video then on kind of emerging trends, some things. Hopefully there are just a few nuggets in this conversation that you can pull away with that you find interesting. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.